Welcome to the Boardroom. I'm your host, Ntlalontle, and today we are joined by Mthunzi Mdwaba. He is the Premier candidate for the UDM and Chairman and CEO of Tuja Holdings. He's the Premier candidate for the UDM, and we are quickly approaching the elections, and there's a lot to talk about. Also, he has done a lot, not just in South Africa, and also abroad in the IT sector. Mthunzi, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate you having us, Ntlalontle.
Yes. First and foremost, please introduce yourself. You have done quite a lot in your time, I mean, especially offshore and also in South Africa. Please just take us through some of your projects and your success stories.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I like to describe myself as a rural boy. It's always the best place to start. Having grown up in a place called Colville, Herschel in the Eastern Cape. Very interesting place because it was a good introduction to how I would work with the whole world, in that you grow up there speaking a multiplicity of languages. You speak about 4 languages if you want to. Your person who likes languages, your Afrikaans, your English, and then your Sotho and your Xhosa all at once as you grow up. I was then later to study at Wits University, majored in industrial sociology and African politics, and then later went to do a postgraduate degree in law. Fast forwarding that, I then went into the music industry, became an entertainment lawyer or an intellectual property specialist. Acted for many people in the country. People might not remember Lebo Mathosa of Boom Shaka. I won a case for her in the Supreme Court back in the day. I represented people like Sipho Gumede, many members from Joyous Celebration, then went on to also run a record label and launched, amongst others, Tukulo Magesh's solo career when he came out of TKZ, launched Bugalav, Gabelo's Pantsula for Life came from our studio, Danny K was launched by us, and brought Craig David to this country for the first time. Wow. But yeah, you know, so I did a lot in the music industry.
You were also there with Kalawa.
Kalawa, well, I know the guys from Kalawa. In fact, I always joke with people when people don't know where Kalawa came from, and I believe our history is important, that, you know, Christos Katsaitis, who used to operate with Lebu Mathosa. In fact, when I did the case, I met Lebu and Christos at the same time.
Not DJ Christos.
DJ Christos. Yeah, DJ Christos. He's the KA in Kalawa, Katsaitis. And then Don Laka is the LA, and WA is Oscar Warona. That's how Kalawa came about. And I mean, they're amazing success. And when I also ran the music industry, back then it was the Association of the South African Music Industry, which today is called the Recording Industry of South Africa. You'll know that that body represents all the producers or record companies in music. Back then, I did a lot of the local content that people take for granted today. I have people telling me about Hlaudi or somebody, Mutsweneng from SABC, when you talk about local content. I said to him, I'm sure he was a baby when I did local content lobbying. I don't want to have any disrespect for him, but when we did local content lobbying, there was no local content. The radio stations in this country did not play our local music. Kwaito, Gom, Piano come from that because we lobbied for it. I lobbied for a public performance right, what is called needle time. Again, people take those for granted these days. I was followed by other colleagues who perfected and finished that journey, but I had to do that. People don't know that in my office, especially when we were doing the local content and the South African Music Awards, I used to also source the sponsorship for the South African Music Awards. Back in the day, we took the summers to Sun City, when the summers were the summers, because I'm told these days they are not the summers they used to be. I also, at the time, as we were busy renegotiating all the contracts between the music industry and television, Channel O, Mnet, SABC, all the players, and so on. So I did all of that. We actually came up with a project in my office called Local Esleker. People don't know where Local Esleker comes from. It came from us. And why we did that is that we realized that typical of South Africans tend to be, we're very good people. We're very smart. We're very innovative. We're very creative. But we have a complex sometimes, and it's an amazing complex where we have an inferiority complex of thinking things that come from outside are better than us. So whenever we were lobbying for local content, people would say, yeah, but who's going to listen to our music? I said, but we need to expose our music. We need to expose who we are. And then once we've exposed who we are, the world is our oyster. And at the time, I was comparing the Brits and the Grammys with what we were doing in the country, and I was very convinced that we can build the music industry and we can build our local content and we can be like other people are in their countries, very proud of their culture, very proud of their languages, you know, which we haven't done well in this country. You know, even with languages, we have 11 official languages, but your proficiency is if you speak English. If you speak good Xhosa, you speak good Zulu, you speak good Sepedi, you could speak good Afrikaans, people look at you funny when we have 11. And that diversity makes us who we are. But moving right along, when I had done all of that in the music industry, I went into technology. And I got into technology in a very zigzagged way, a very pioneering entity that I was involved in, and was there for probably like a year, a company called Metropolis. And then I was taken back into the record industry because one of the shareholders in that Metropolis was Prime Media, and Prime Media Music was in trouble. So they asked me to turn around Prime Media. And that's probably when I tried and realized for the first time that I'm a turnaround specialist. Because I went into Prime Media Music, that's how Kabelo Bugalove was born and all the things that I've mentioned there. And I'd also come from the hotel industry, which I forgot to mention. I'd been in the hotel, and it's very important because it taught me customer service, it taught me hospitality, it taught me how to deal with people, that people are the same. I mean, the way I was brought up in the rural villages is that even if you're dealing with somebody who is a janitor, as they say in the US, a sweeper, to the president, you must have respect. Ubuntu. Ubuntu. When you talk Ubuntu, you talk about that. But you know, when you're in the hotel industry, it re-emphasizes that, it brings it up, because anybody who comes in is your customer. That's it. Doesn't matter what the person looks like. This is your customer who's coming to sleep on your bed and eat the food you provide, and so on and so on. So I moved on from that and then went into now the IT sector proper. And how that happened also happened purely by accident. So I had left music, and the way I'd left, I didn't like it. I was starting to be a little bit concerned about how corporate deals with people. Because you know, in corporate, you're just a number. We were busy building Prime Media Music when all of a sudden there was shareholder activism within Prime Media from some UK shareholders, I was told, who felt that Prime Media Music was a long horizon business. You know, it was going to take too long to turn it around to what they want. And we were doing well. I mean, we were starting to rock the industry in South Africa. All the majors, you know, the Sonys and the Warners through Gallo, the EMIs, the Polygrams that are now Universal, the BMGs, were scared of Prime Media Music, where Bugalove was, and Tukolo and Denny K and whatever. But for some reason, made it corporate, we had to retrench. I had people coming to work for me. They came because I invited them, right? I felt so bitter. And that's the year I also started cycling heavily. And were it not for cycling, I probably would have gone mad. I think that saved me. Around about 2001, 2002, I started cycling, doing all these races with bicycling and whatever. It gave me peace of mind. It gave me a way of thinking about how to do things. And whilst that was happening, I then, when I left, having had this retrenchment, I then said to Prime Media, you asked me to retrench my people, I now ask you to retrench me. They said, no, we could take you to stay Kinoko, to the movies. I said, no, I want you to retrench me. The same way I retrench my people. I'll show you how if you don't know how to. But you must pay me, you know, and in my package, I made them pay me for a year, but I also, as punishment, made them pay for my MBA. I didn't really feel like doing an MBA, to tell you the truth, but I needed to punish them. I needed to feel that I've punished them. So they gave me a sponsorship of an MBA. I went to do an MBA at Henley. But whilst I was at Henley, the professor at Henley made a fundamental mistake. He started criticizing Richard Branson, and he said, yeah, he's not focused. He's an entrepreneur who splits his focus on too many things. He'll never make it. And the more I read the case study, the more I thought, this professor is smoking something very bad and illegal. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So I started arguing with him, and I had been thinking that if this is what I'm going to do in the MBA, then maybe it's not worth it. Until a friend said to me, separately from this, we were out for a weekend, and a friend said to me, "Why are you doing an MBA?" I said, "Well, you know, everybody's doing an MBA. It was 2001, 2. I need to better myself." And she said to me, "Mthunzi, you know you don't need an MBA." He says, "Do yourself a favor. You know, you've got a family you need to spend time with." And she wasn't well. She was she was attacked by ill health. And she said, "You know, if I could turn the clock, me, as a person who's ill today, I would spend more time with my family rather than looking for things to do and things to make me look better and sound better." He says, "I am telling you as your friend who is been in business for many years, you don't need an MBA. And the company you just bought into, Talk IT," so I met somebody in the MBA who, you know, made me believe this Talk IT was better than it was, only to find that it was in deep, deep trouble, right? And the more I explained what this company needed to be turned around, the more she said,
36 million.
Your 36 million in losses. Yes, we had a 36 million assessed loss, which was good, of course, for us as the owners and management. There were 5 of us, I think, for purposes of this country. There were 3 white people and 2 of us black. I brought the other black guy. And to turn around this company, she said to me, her name is Denise. I remember Denise saying this to me. And she said, "You can do an MBA in that company. That can be your MBA." As it turned out, it was probably worth 3 MBAs. Because as the majority shareholder, CEO and chairman of Talk IT, we were able to turn it around in the space of 4 years and make it one of the most profitable training solutions providers. We hired 4 times the people we'd had. We'd had about 25 people, I think, when we started. We ended up having in excess of 100 people during that time. We built it in 27 countries. We were referred to as the coffee shop of the industry. And why we're referred to as the coffee shop of the industry is that we used to act for data, business connection, data-centric, state information technology agency. You think about any telco or information communications, telecommunications company that wanted to play, they had to be our clients, right? And the banks, we had Standard Bank, we had FNB, we had Investec, we had Nedbank. The only one we didn't have was ABSA, but ABSA used to send its people via the back to us, via another company for some reason, and then we'd send them back the same way. We had telcos as well, or the mobile telephony companies that were getting very prominent and very powerful. We had Vodacom, we had MTN, we had Cell C, and Telkom South Africa, wherever they went in the African continent, they took us. Wherever Vodacom went, they took us. Wherever MTN went, they took us. And before we knew it, we were in 27 countries. We became the largest high technical training solutions provider, as they called it, in the sub-Saharan continent. We became one of the top 10 companies to be consulted by Cisco in the world. We won Cisco Partner of the Year every year for 7 years in a row. We won Microsoft Partner of the Year twice in 5 years. We introduced cloud computing in South Africa and Africa and the Middle East. There was no cloud computing during our time, around about, I think, 2003, 2004, thereabouts. And at that time, this is where now it becomes very important. So I'm sort of now, I would say, becoming an entrepreneur, realizing that I'm good at this being entrepreneurship thing, but at the same time, I'm realizing that I'm good at turnaround. Of course, turnaround means you must have good teams with you. I had amazing teams. Amazing. So one of the things I've always been able to do is to build good teams that make me look good. Okay? People who are smarter than me. This is the thing you don't find today. The whole world, some people get threatened by smart people, but in our country specifically, the ANC is a typical example of a party that fails to recognize people that are smart, because we've got multitudes and multitudes of capable, young, black, white, blue, pink, doesn't matter whether they are Jewish, Greek, you name it, we have it in South Africa. We've got a kaleidoscope, a mix of a very complex kind of gift by humanity that we have. But be that as it may, as I'm minding my business at Talk IT, a guy comes and he says he's looking for revolutionaries. He's from something called the BITF, the Black Information Technology Forum. So I said, sorry, revolutionary, why are you coming to me? I'm a rural boy. What I know about revolutionary is what I read about the French Revolution and Marie Antoinette in history, because, you know, we used to read only the history of other people, not ours, right? And I said, all I know as well is what happens in industrial sociology and African politics. Other than that, I don't know. He said, no, leave the identification of of revolutionaries to us. We know you to be a revolutionary. And to tell you the truth, it's taken me many years to accept that I am a revolutionary. In fact, it is probably the first time in an interview that I'm owning up today that actually I'm a revolutionary for change, and I love it. And that's why a lot of young people follow me on X, which I must mention is @Tizoro1. 70% of the people who follow me on X, what used to be Twitter, are young people. The people that follow me on LinkedIn, 70% are young people. The people that follow me on TikTok, you know, my team put together a TikTok platform about 4.5 weeks ago. I'm already sitting on 7,400 followers. The majority of the people there are the youth. They put together a YouTube channel for me 3 days, 4 days ago. We're already sitting on 100 subscribers this morning, right? And it's young people. So, but I never knew that he saw or they saw something I didn't see. And he was right when he said I must leave it to them to decide what a revolutionary looks like, because I didn't see myself as a revolutionary. And I say this because every environment I've been in, I've been able to effect change at great pain to myself, great pain. People don't like change. We all don't like change. We say we want it, but when it happens, we look at the person who's bringing the change as being the enemy, right? So I've always had to deal with, you know, having shambok marks and dagger marks on my back because I'm the bad guy who's bringing the change. I've always been very good at impact. I've always been good at fighting for social justice, which is why I call myself a business activist. I'm not popular, right, interestingly enough, with businesses, you know, companies in South Africa, for example. I don't have one, you know, shouting from the rooftops that, no, this is our guy, even though I went on to be the first African in the world to lead all employers of the world, 150 countries, speaking for 50 million companies, and became the first African since 1919, in 2017, to be the vice chairman of the International Labour Organization, leading all employers of the world in 187 countries. And for me, I jump around because I want to give the essence of the story and the essence of the introduction, because that's what you've asked me. So having been in the BITF, I ended up being in the Black Information Technology Forum when this guy recruited me. Within a few months, I became the Secretary General for Gauteng of the BITF, and then a year later became the National Chairman of the BITF. Now, the BITF is very important to know, was always for previously disadvantaged black IT technicians. Remembering that South Africa pre-94, when you're black, you had no opportunities. And if you did, there were menial opportunities, or you simply did them because you were creative and innovative, which we are. You know, that's another thing, by the way. Apartheid made us very innovative and very creative because it told us where not to go. It told us what not to do. It told us who not to be a boyfriend or a girlfriend to, or to marry. It told us all these things you could not do. So to survive, you always needed to find a way to do and make sure you beat them at doing it. And so for me, it became a very real situation where I can see what it is I must do in the BITF, making sure that we address the imbalances of the past for IT technicians, for owners of IT, information technology companies. The people who are not invited to sit on the board, and you find them as a rarity, are human resources directors. Think about it. Just cast your mind. Think about any company. There'll be, I tell you, 1 out of 10 all over the world. Worse in the developing countries, right? But you'll find IT, you will find commercial directors, you will find whatever other than people, right? And when you look at budgets for governments in Africa, in Latin America, you will find that the budget for labor is about 1.5 to 3% at best of the entire budget. And yet that is the department that is the custodian for people. So then you must ask, how is that? How does it work? And then when any company is in trouble, the point they go to is firing people. Section 189 in South Africa, to the CCMA, right? And we've tried to tell a minister who is a trade unionist, or used to be a trade unionist, we can still remember that he used to be a trade unionist, to say, Munnawe, this 189 is dodgy. Why is it dodgy? Because when a company decides to retrench, it goes to the CCMA. There's nothing compulsory for the company to go to Productivity South Africa. Productivity South Africa, as an entity of the Employment Services Act, the raison d'être, as the French would say, the rationale for its existence, is that it must contribute to creation of jobs, it must contribute to retention of jobs, it must contribute to competitiveness. And it must intervene in the market when the market is not performing like it did in the COVID. It has programs that some clever person came up with to say, listen, this is what you must do. But it is voluntary now for people to go to Productivity SA when they are retrenching. Make it compulsory. Why? I lived in San Francisco a few years back. Remember, I was moving between Joburg, Geneva, and San Francisco. Why? Because I've always been a turnaround specialist. I was turning around a company in San Francisco that was in trouble in the middle of the financial crisis, right? And I'd always had a theory, but I proved it there, that most people on the C-level, when they don't know what is wrong with a company or they are lazy to go into looking for what is wrong, it's easy to fire people, right? You just blame the people. Just say, oh, they're all useless, right? And the funny thing is, after staying in San Francisco for a while and talking to the other vice president, in the US, everybody's a president, right? Because even the guy who was the CEO was the president. I was his boss, but he was the president there, right? So after a while, I found that no, actually the CEO, the president is the problem. He's the one who's driving this thing to the ground. And it has nothing to do with the financial crisis. It's just him. It's called operational inefficiency. But nobody on the C-level can be operationally inefficient, you see. It's the people at the bottom. And yet, we know the fish always rots from the head. So, I think for me, it's very important that we stress that I don't believe there's ever been a South African who has held positions in two organizations, a black one and a white one, the BITF being the national chairman and the ITA, the Information Technology Association, where I served 2 terms. I was asked to serve 2 terms, and I acted for the whole information communications technology sector. And by being involved in that, I also was involved in the drafting of the ICTB charter, which was the leading charter in the country. All other attempts with other charters in the mining, if you remember, were a bit of a mess. There was controversy, and ours was the one that led the way. And moving from that, because I was now also sitting on the board of BUSA, Business Unity South Africa, as the overall business body in South Africa, that body, I became then the vice president of BUSA. That is a different story for a different day. There's a lot that happened there, including the current president of the other party that's competing heavily, MK, not being happy with me because I decided that I would support Mthunzi Mdwaba as the first woman president of BUSA, and President Zuma wanted Sandile Zungu as the president, and he got very upset when I supported Mthunzi Mdwaba. I was already living in San Francisco at the time, turning around another company in a group of companies that had bought Talk IT, and I was able to turn around a company there that had clients like Wells Fargo, SEIU, the second largest trade union in the US, companies like Cisco, and so on and so on. So for me, when I talk about being a turnaround specialist, it's very important, especially for my Gauteng Premier candidate position, because Gauteng is a turnaround. Gauteng is a mess. Gauteng accounts for 33% of the GDP of this country. And as we sit on the precipice in this country, we cannot afford to let Gauteng fall over the precipice, because the challenge we now have is we have people, I think, who never recovered from fighting for the struggle back in the day, pre-94, who think that the best way to do things is sloganeering, and he or she who shouts the loudest or who screams the loudest is the one who's going to do things. You've got people that are theoreticians. You've got people that have never played in a full game. I always say they are reserves in a game. They've never been in a game to play and understand how to implement when we talk about job creation, when we talk about sustainable enterprises, when we talk about service provision to our people, when we talk about issues of just passing laws. When you look at passing good laws, for example, for creatives, we're dealing at the moment with a Copyright Amendment Act, and a Performance Protection Rights Amendment Act that are not speaking to each other, that are flawed, where the Copyright Act talks about fair use, which is absolute rubbish. I've never heard of something called fair use when you are taking something that belongs to somebody else and you say, no, I've decided what fair use is. So you need practitioners. And for me, having moved on to then become the first African to be the vice president of the largest private sector organization in the world, the International Organization of Employers, which has over 150 business organizations, speaks for over 50 million companies. And I, a rural boy who came from the Eastern Cape, was the first African to become that since 1920. Also the first African to become the International Labour Organization vice chairman in terms of 187 countries, leading all the employers in the world. And also went on to become the United Nations chairman for employment policy in the IOE for the whole world in terms of business and human rights. So I mention all these things, and people, when you mention these things in South Africa, in our lovely continent of Africa, they say you're arrogant. But for me, we need to come out as Africans and learn to accept that confidence for you as an African is a good thing. And yes, we have been colonized so badly. We have such Eurocentric kind of, stuff that messes up with our heads. We need to get over that. We need to have respect for each other as Africans. We need to have respect for each other as black people. And we know that the whole world thinks we're a gifted people. The whole world thinks we have the best ethical governance anyway. But here, we're dealing with a corrupt government because of a corrupt ruling party, which is why as the UDM we're saying corruption destroys freedom. And we are saying give us the opportunity as the UDM to make Gauteng respected again, to make South Africa respected again. So for me, I have a mix of a lot of things. I have a mix.
Let's talk also about Mthunzi as a premier candidate for Gauteng. Just some of the pointers in your turnaround strategy for Gauteng. What have you identified? Yes, we say corruption, but what are the reforms you are bringing into the space?
Well, the reforms I'm bringing, first of all, is to bring meritocracy. I think that's a very big reform. We haven't heard of merit-based choosing of people in terms of a human capital development. I bring diversity. We have to bring a lot of young people. We believe we must import young people that are skilled. I refuse. We have innovative, creative, entrepreneurial young people in this country that are ending up having mental health issues because we alienate them. We feel that they must sit there whilst we tell them to do things when they can see we're messing them up. We need women. There's a lot of young women who are very gifted. So I bring teams. I don't think this is known in this country where people deploy people who are incompetent, right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going to people you know to work with. But go to people who can do things. And if they can't do things, surround them with people who can help them do things. If we say there's going to be a bridge, there must be a bridge. If we say there's going to be a school, there must be a school. If we say there must be a hospital, there must be a hospital. I'm bringing in an idea as a turnaround strategist of somebody who knows how to deal with crisis management. I turn around the company in California in the middle of the financial crisis. I turn around Talk IT here. I've done lots of turnaround everywhere. You need to know short term, medium term, long term what you can be able to do. In the short term, there are things we can jump on, like fixing water leaks. Gauteng has 48% of water leaking out of its pipes. And we're running short of water. Yes, we've also grown about 20 to 25% in leaps and bounds. We need to bring more water. But let's start by keeping the water that's there. There are potholes that we have on our roads. How do you bring people into our country, foreign direct investment, in attract investors, when every time you drive anywhere, you're going to have a puncture, right? Those are things we can do in the short term, okay? Load shedding. All of a sudden, there's no load shedding now for the election. So which means it's possible to be able to do this. We just need to find out what it is that help us to keep the energy on when it's elections. It's what, probably 24, 25 days now? Amazing. Yes. We've never had it that long. It's never been longer than 3-4 days, right? So it means that's okay. That's short term. Medium term, we need employment policies. We need industrial policies. With all the things we should have had for the last 30 years, right? We need to have a future of work and artificial intelligence policies, which if we bring together, we can quantum leap all the other people and be able to do this. We need to create sustainable jobs. We need to create sustainable enterprises. We need to stop retrenchments that make no sense. That you can do in the short to medium term. Why? Because the Section 189 retrenchment notice to the CCMA that we do in this country is terrible. What you need to do is to get entities like Productivity South Africa, that I used to chair until I was removed by the minister because he doesn't like me telling them the truth. He says I'm bad for his government or whatever that means. So for me, Productivity SA was created as an entity that contributes to the creation of jobs, contributes to the retention of jobs, contributes to competitiveness in this country. You need anybody who's going to retrench to go there at the same time as they go to the CCMA, so we can check whether the C level is operating efficiently. Because more times we find the CEOs and the CFOs and the C tend to get rid of people at the bottom to cut costs, which is not what productivity is about. Productivity is about total cost productivity, not just a labor cost and whatever. And you find that if it's operationally inefficient, there can be intervention so that we don't lose the jobs. But if we do lose the jobs, then we've got a way of migrating those jobs into ecosystems that can be able to retrain, coach, mentor, put people into new incubated value chains and create jobs where they are in the province that the person is in. This is my dream, and this is what I know is irrealizable. And we can do it. Why? Because we've got the human capital development. We haven't built it, we haven't maintained it, we haven't empowered it, we haven't enabled it, and now it's time to do it.
Was this the work you were to do with the UIF?
Well, yes.
Not to go too much on that.
Yes, the Tuja ecosystem is actually based on a concept that I built based on the Talk IT training company that I told you about, where I built it in 27 countries, where I could see that if we train 1 million people, and we used to get every award for training, and every award, as I've mentioned, for Cisco Partner of the Year and whatever but every time there was like 20 to 25% that is not catered for, because we used to have a 75 to 80% conversion from training to employability. I finally found a way of putting together an ecosystem where everyone that gets into the ecosystem will not just be trained, whereas in this particular instance, you are creating employment that is sustainable, that is permanent. You are creating enterprises, cooperatives that are sustainable, that are going to be there forever. Right? That's why we were going to train. We still will, by the way, because I intend to win it. I'm going to appeal, and I know I will win. I know the elections is another reason why they've got their brothers, doing their thing in the judicial system to make sure that I keep losing. But I know that beyond the election, there's not going to be, they won't be employed, these people, because they're not coming back. I can tell you they are losing. This is one time the ANC is going, boy. It's going to be way, not even under 50, I think under 40%, if you ask me. And we are going to come in with coalitions that are regulated, that make sense to do things the right way, based on meritocracy, as I've said.
Yes, please close it off, Mthunzi, and speak to these countries with also entrepreneurs looking to get into business and also, to make it in the business world.
South Africa and the entire Africa, we have such an amazing opportunity, guys. We have the highest take-up of entrepreneurship in the world. We have lots of innovation, lots of creativity, but we haven't nurtured our innovation and our creativity. And when we talk about funding, which is another passion area for me, is to make sure that we turn all these development financial institutions to funders of first resort rather than funders of last resort. So we must fund our young people. So for me, the opportunity is to make sure that we don't have a high take-up of enterprises and then also have the highest drop and loss-making and failure rate of SMMEs in the world, because we have a demographic advantage. 70% of our young people, as opposed to the aging populations, for example, in Europe and other parts of the world, right? We have the demographic advantage here. I know we have first-time voters, about 5.2 million first-time voters who don't know who to vote for. But all in all, we've got about 11-point-something voters who are undecided. Do yourself a favor. Choose people who know what they're doing. Choose practitioners, not theoreticians. Choose people who know about leadership, not people who are in positions of authority, who purport to be leaders. Let's stop creating people that are gods, deityship, and make them think they're important and when they are not and they don't know what they're doing. So I'm saying vote for the United Democratic Movement. Vote for the UDM. Why? We have a track record of eliminating corruption and fighting against corruption in this country. The speaker who resigned was because of Holomisa and Gwangwa in parliament, Ngabayomzi Gwangwa. The Steinhoff billions that were stolen, Marcus Joste, who shot himself recently, was also the UDM under the leadership of Holomisa and the entire leadership. When you look at issues relating to the SAA Takatso deal by Pravin Gordhan, who was trying to pull a fast one on us, was also the UDM. So we have a track record. For us, it's not rhetoric. We're not talking about things that we're going to think about. We're not talking about things that we're going to go and... We don't have the luxury of this. We need people who can hit the ground running. We need people who know what they are doing. We know how to deal with corruption. We'll have, for example, special anti-corruption courts. We've got conscription that we're going to introduce for the discipline and creation of jobs of our young people. We know how to create jobs. We know how to create enterprises. We know how to do things. So vote UDM and you will not be disappointed. Make Gauteng respected again, make South Africa respected again.
Yes. Also, Mthunzi, just in a short time, the SOEs, I mean, you just mentioned SAA, is also another curious case. What is the problem with these SOEs, and where do you think maybe we can fix it?
Well, state-owned enterprises have exactly the same problem. You see, we have deployed people based on political friendships and based on them being members of this party and that party. I mean, there's a colleague of mine, for example, I don't have liberty to talk about it, but you know, I can arrange for you to interview her, who's fighting with another minister because when she was sitting on the board of an SOE, she was asked to write off 270 million. And when she refused, and the other board members, they were kicked out. So she's fighting for that against that minister to say, sorry, I'm not going to allow you to do that. This is unfortunately the people we have. We have incompetent people who don't know what they don't know, who don't know how to surround themselves with people who know, who don't know how to listen when they are told something is going down as opposed to going up. And therefore, when you are in the red, they can't tell you're in the red. And even when you are in the red, they only think about their pocket. So it's the same, it's endemic. We have what I refer to as very systemic, structured corruption in this country. It's in every part of the value chains of the work we do. So the SOEs actually can be turned around. It may well be that we have to get 49% private sector, which is what we've recommended as well as the UDM in our manifesto, even for ESCOM. But not over 50%. We don't want the private sector to be over 50% because I come from the private sector. I've led the entire world of the private sector.
ESCOM is unbundling right now.
Well, even that unbundling is questionable. We don't have enough time now to talk about it because I also think it's being unbundled for friends. You see, it's looting season. People are looting. That's why you also have the 23.8 billion that's been given by Nxesi to Lesufi Panyaza to allegedly create over 500,000 jobs that we know is a lie. That will never happen because he doesn't even know. I mean, Lesufi, really, what experience has he got? Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.